been posting these videos as a form of recovery from the trauma of watching my little brother, Paul Cairns, 64 with Down syndrome, be locked away by the British Columbia New Democratic Party government for 588 days after I complained to the police when I discovered what I alleged to be a fraudulent and forged power of attorney the BC government created to give Paul the COVID-19 shot. They appointed my then 82-year-old Catholic nun sister 4,000 kilometers away in Ontario as Paul's guardian. She had only met Paul a few times over the course of his life. She didn't understand his speech or communication, and when the government told her to cut off our contact after I discovered the fraudulent and forged power of attorney and complained to the police, she terminated his contact. She never moved Paul to be closer to her, and she never moved here to be closer to him. I had cared for Paul. We had visited at will. I grew up with him. I'm only 2 years older than he was. And I had cared for him his whole life. We had visited at will. She had never cared for him once or at all, or provided anything materially for his care. So the government was angry and they told her to cut off his visits with me. He didn't understand what was going on. We were allowed a 10-minute visit once a week on the telephone, and he begged me to visit him. It was heartbreaking. Finally, after he had a stroke on April 13th of 2024, her lawyer emailed me and said that I could have a visit with him. I could arrange a visit through him. The Catholic Church spent, in my estimation, about $2 million trying to uphold this fraudulent and forged power of attorney. When I visited Paul in the hospital at Burnaby General, he appeared to be recovering remarkably well. He sat up, grabbed a book from my hand, turned the pages perfectly. He was so happy to see me. He grabbed my hand and squeezed it so tight, I thought he was going to crush it. I sat outside his room, outside of the ward, for 10 to 12 hours a day, but I was only allowed to visit him for 10 minutes a day. The nun and the government were afraid, I believe, that I would get an authentic sample of Paul's signature. I could see that the signature on the power of attorney was a forgery because I taught Paul to print the only word that he could ever print or read, his first name, Paul. It took me about a year as a little girl. So when Paul was in the hospital, I got a telephone call from the Burnaby RCMP. They told me they had been ordered by their Ottawa Oversight Agency to reopen the investigation into the fraudulent and forged power of attorney. So I went to court the next morning and asked the judge who had conduct of the case to suspend the nun's guardianship over Paul pending the RCMP investigation. And when I got back to the hospital, the nun said to me, she met me at the door. She had isolated Paul in a room where only she and he were allowed. And she met me at the door, and she wouldn't look me in the eye, but she said, "Say goodbye to Paul, he's dying." All of Paul's medical supports had been removed. He had a ventilator and an oxygen mask that had been removed. It appeared that his intravenous was also removed. And he appeared to me to be dead at that time. His eyes were wide open, and his pupils were dilated and fixed. I believed that she had killed him at that point, but I got an email from her later saying that he had died and I could come and look at his body. After Paul died, after they had taken away all of Paul's rights and freedoms of any human being, they went after me and they brought on an application, a 4-day application to have me designated permanently what's called a vexatious litigant, which is a very rare and unusual designation in Canadian law that suspends all of my access to the courts. I can't even defend myself from a suit. I can't file an affidavit without permission of a judge. And I applied to have that reconsidered at the Supreme Court of Canada, and I wasn't even given leave to appeal. So after Paul died, and after I had been designated a vexatious litigant, I started looking into Canada's euthanasia program, which I hadn't really been paying any attention to. In 1976, the Parliament of Canada abolished capital punishment. So they said the government could not kill citizens, couldn't kill anybody because it was irreversible and people make mistakes. And that was in 1976 for civilians, and it was extended to military staff in 1999. But in 2015, I discovered that the Supreme Court of Canada reversed their earlier decision in Canada and Sue Rodriguez. They had considered the issue of euthanasia in a case where a woman with multiple sclerosis had been put forward by a member of parliament to be killed by a doctor as a mercy killing. And the Supreme Court of Canada said no, it was not in the public interest for doctors to be killing their patients. But in February of 2015, another case came before it. It was actually a woman who had already gone to Switzerland and been killed by a doctor in Switzerland. The case was Canada versus Kay Carter. Kay Carter had a non-terminal illness called spinal stenosis, a fusion of the spine that was uncomfortable. And this non-governmental organization, this ghoulish death cult named Death with Dignity, put her forward as a test case to change the decision of the Supreme Court of Canada. And the Supreme Court of Canada in February of 2015 anonymously and unanimously, so normally court decisions are authored by particular judges, and some judges dissent. But in this case, reversing their earlier decision in the Rodriguez case, they found that it was that Kay Carter had a constitutional charter right to be killed by the state. If you can imagine anything more bizarre and ridiculous, particularly considering that Parliament had abolished capital punishment or the killing by any citizen by the state in 1976. But the Supreme Court of Canada gave the government of Canada a year to come up with a system of perfect euthanasia. So a system where nobody would ever be killed against their will. People wouldn't be killed out of greed or improper motives. And that it would be a guardrails to protect the rights of Canadian citizens, which of course is bullshit because that cannot be done. 40,000 years of human civilization, even the Neanderthals did not commit euthanasia. They did not kill their elderly, ill, and dying members of their society. And for the most part, in all of human culture, of Homo sapiens, our species, there has never been a culture or a group that killed its elderly, ill, and dying members of society because they were elderly, ill, and dying. So I've been doing everything I can think of, and the government calls this, I forgot to mention that the Chief Justice of this Supreme Court of Canada owned 9 unelected civil servants who are paid by the government. And the Chief Justice at that time was a woman named Beverly McLaughlin, who I met her at a conference when I was in law school. I was a psychologist with mentally handicapped adults with the government of British Columbia, and then I went to law school to help disabled people. I was the first single mother to graduate from law school in British Columbia history, and I became a federal prosecutor and then a family lawyer. I was hired by Carrie Lynn Finlay, the new leader of the Conservative Party of British Columbia, but I was hired by her in May of 1994, and then I went out on my own. And I practiced family law for 23 years. So what I discovered is that the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Canada that had changed the law of murder, first-degree murder, so that the government could kill innocent, vulnerable, and already marginalized Canadian citizens, Beverly McLaughlin, then went to work for the Communist Party of China in Hong Kong for 6 years from 2018 to 2024. And she was already very old in 2015. So what she was doing for the Communist Party of China, other than being on their payroll, I don't know. but it's very suspicious circumstances. And since that time, since February of 2015, Canada has executed extrajudicially by lethal injection, paying regular doctors and nurses to kill Canadian citizens. 103,000 Canadian citizens have been executed extrajudicially. The government created this made up propaganda word, MAiD, medical assistance in dying. And it's not medical because medical is from the Greek verb to heal. And you don't heal anyone by killing them with a lethal injection. So I think the circumstances under which the law was changed, first degree murder was changed to a process where the government could execute extrajudicially Canadian citizens. So with no judicial oversight whatsoever, no legal oversight, that any doctor, any nurse can sign a form and have that and execute that person right away. There's no waiting period. There's really no guardrails left at all. And the Parliament of Canada now wants to extend it to babies and what they call children, mature minors, and depressed people in 2027. It's the most barbaric system. Already, Scotland, the United Kingdom, and France, the euthanasia bills have come before it, and based on the horrific experience in Canada, the barbaric experience in Canada, they've all let those euthanasia bills die. There's of the 196 countries in the world, there's only 4 that allow euthanasia, and they're nothing to do with our culture or our founding nations, and that's Switzerland, Spain, the Netherlands, and Canada. So in Canada executes extrajudicially more than 45 people every single day. And as I've said, since 2015, the government has killed 103,000 innocent, vulnerable people. So what I was thinking tomorrow is the 250th anniversary of the United States of America. And I have a personal connection with the both of my grandfathers landed from Ireland. They escaped the genocide by the British of the Irish in the potato famine of 1847. And they both landed in the United States. My maternal grandfather, great-grandfather, landed in Cincinnati. And my paternal grandfather landed in Vermont, but they both moved to Canada. So they both chose Canada over the United States. But tomorrow is the 250th anniversary of the United States. And Canada also used to feel very superior to the United States because we abolished slavery 72. Yeah, one of the main reasons why we didn't become part of the United States is because we abolished slavery 3 generations, 72 years before the American 13th Amendment that abolished slavery. And we always felt, and the slaves who were escaping slavery in the United States would follow the North Star to Canada. But I've looked up the statistics, and I'm going to post a little screenshot of what the statistics is. But I just asked ChatGPT to break down the per capita rates of execution. So right now there is a big discussion in the United States, or a controversy, because Idaho has expanded their capital punishment of convicted murderers. So these are people who have been convicted with a judge, jury, and legal counsel. So millions of dollars is usually spent on their legal representation, whereas the people that Canada kills have no right to any legal representation at all. And they're not even given funds for counseling. All it takes is a signature of any doctor or any nurse on a piece of paper, on a form. They don't need to know the person, and they don't need to be a specialist in whatever ailment the person is suffering from. So at this moment in time, as of the end of April of 2026, the population of the United States was 343 million people, and the population of Canada was 41 million. The chance of being executed by lethal injection in Canada is 1 in 2,521. So you have a 1 in 2,521 chance of dying by lethal injection in government, administered by the government in Canada. So that's a 1 in 2,521 chance of being executed extrajudicially by lethal injection in Canada. In the US, you have a 1 in almost 8 million chance of being executed by lethal injection. So Canada's rate of death by lethal injection is 3,161 times higher or per capita than in the USA. So you might say, oh, well, but the people in Canada, they choose to die. So it's completely different than being forced to die. But it's the state that is killing both populations. The government, there's a special carve out of first degree murder where the government can pay a doctor to execute you extrajudicially. And consent is a very wobbly thing. We all know that people do things that are not good for them and that they change their mind from day to day. And in particular, the people who are survivors of sexual abuse, of rape or sexual abuse, SA, are far more likely to have self-injurious inclinations and poor self-esteem. So they're at a disadvantage and they're offered lethal injections by doctors as medical care. So I just want to repeat those statistics. There's 343 million people in the United States, 41 million in Canada. The chance of being executed by lethal injection in Canada is 1 in 2,521. But in the United States, the chance of being executed by lethal injection is 1 in 8 million. And Canada's rate of death by lethal injection is 3,161 times higher per capita than in the USA. So 43 people were executed by lethal injection in the United States in 2025. And 17,000 human beings were executed by the government by lethal injection in Canada in 2025. So Canada is committing a genocide, the exact same thing that Britain did to the Irish in 1847. Canada is doing to its own people, and 96% of the people that Canada kills are of European descent, so they're white, Canadian-born citizens. So Canada's not killing immigrants, and is not killing people of color or people from Africa or Chinese. I believe that. I believe that this is a trend that has been imposed on Canada by the communist infiltration in our politics by the Communist Party of China, who we know executes extrajudicially executes their political prisoners. The Falun Gong, their religious cult, are executed and their organs are harvested for the political elite in China. And the organs are harvested of these Canadians that are executed extrajudicially by lethal injection in Canada as well. And that's why they want to expand the types of people that they killed to babies, children, and people who are only suffering from mental illness, because their organs are more acceptable for harvesting. So I want to wish our brave and wonderful neighbors to the south, the the most beautiful country in the world. But the United States, I'm telling you, you are on the razor's edge of what Canada's gone through. Look at us. We are the evil top half of North America. And with the birthright decision that was made yesterday or Wednesday by the Supreme Court of the United States, where birthright citizenship was upheld, you're in for a rocky, rocky road. That you will have communist spies infiltrating your country and creating anchor babies. You need to hold on to your freedom. You fought, you had your civil war to abolish slavery, and 850,000 people died to abolish slavery and to uphold freedom. And Canada, for some reason, it just, didn't get the memo. So remember, there is a 3,161 times higher per capita rate of being executed by lethal injection in Canada by the government than in the United States. The United States killed 43 people in all of 2025, and Canada killed almost 17,000 people in that time. And the people that the United States killed were convicted killers, people who were a threat to society. And the people that Canada kills are innocent, vulnerable, already marginalized people. So anyways, happy 250th birthday, United States. I love you all.